Hey there, good evening, and welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronx Net's program where we talk to reporters and writers and editors and filmmakers. And in our second segment, we're going to be talking to a Grammy Award winning folk singer. And I'll explain why that's relevant here for the Borough of the Bronx. But to start this evening, we're going to talk to the health reporter for Gothamist and WNYC. It is my pleasure to welcome Caroline Lewis to the Bronx Buzz. Nice to have you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Let's just get started. You haven't been on our program before. Let's just talk a little bit about your background, where you're from, how did you get into journalism, what inspired you to say, I think I'm going to do this?
Well, I'm actually a native New Yorker. Went to public school, in the city. And my dad was a journalist. He taught journalism at York College for like over 30 years. So, I obviously had a little bit of inspiration. My mom was the editor of a library journal, which is like a library publication. But I think I always just thought it was a cool job. You get to talk to so many different kinds of people. You get to speak truth to power. And I've always had a lot of different interests, but I became a healthcare reporter for Crane's New York Business, where I really learned so much about how the health system works. And now I get to write about that for more of a general audience, at Gothamist, and talk about it on the radio for WNYC, which I find really rewarding.
And if, you talk about truth to power and, we talk about, you ain't got nothing if you don't have your health. When you look at the foundation of what we all need, I guess you're really getting to the grassroots of the grassroots if you're talking about our healthcare. And of course, the last 2 or 3 years, we really have had a lot to talk about, um,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Right. There's always been these really stark, inequities in the city when it comes to health outcomes. Your how long you live has to do with the zip code you grew up in, that kind of thing. But I think that those inequalities just became a lot more clear to people during the pandemic.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Plus, we had kind of a curtain raising. It's like the Wizard of Oz. Ignore that man behind the curtain about our health systems and where they work and where they don't work. But anyway, so we're gonna go one step further back because in order to get good health, you need good food, and you have written really, I think, some extraordinary pieces, very eye-opening pieces on food insecurity. An article you wrote in June talked about food insecure New Yorkers feel the squeeze from rising grocery prices. It's very interesting. We talk about food insecurity, we talk about the pandemic, we talk about a lot of factors, but how much of an impact has inflation, the rise in grocery prices affected New Yorkers and exacerbated what has been, frankly, a very thin system to begin with?
Well, we first, really saw visits to food pantries and soup kitchens spike in, spring of 2020 for obvious reasons. People were losing work and income. And the number of visits to those pantries actually increased, reaching a high in 2021. But then we saw those numbers go down a little bit. And I think the increase that we've started to see again this year is really what people who are working on hunger are attributing to recent inflation. Food prices have increased about 10% over the past year due to inflation and also other global factors, and even more so in grocery stores than in restaurants. And so people are saying, that definitely is contributing to these, food insecurity remaining a major issue.
And you know what I learned? We did a program with Friendly Fridge, and the Friendly Fridge people. There are some in the Bronx. There was one that was kind of closed, and that was disappointing. And one of the things that is very clear, there's one on 242nd Street and Broadway, right under the L, the last stop of the number one train, and people who are working come off that subway stop and go to the Friendly Fridge to get food for their families. And that to me is upsetting. It's scary in a way, but it's very upsetting because here are people with jobs and there's not enough money. And I guess not only the minimum wage has to come into play, but what you're saying about grocery prices has got to be part of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one thing that's important to keep in mind is we do have programs like SNAP and WIC that are supposed to give people money to buy groceries so that they're not relying on pantries and kitchens or fridges, like you're saying. But for one thing, not everyone qualifies. Like if you are undocumented, you might not. So if you have a household where some people are, documented and some people are not, you might not get as much money in SNAP. And then, with inflation and with all these other factors and prices rising, that money might not go as far. Um, and it's not something that's necessarily going to get better right away because people have actually been getting supplemental SNAP payments during the pandemic that could expire soon.
One of the things that you wrote about and you actually mentioned right here is the comparison between a rise in grocery prices versus a rise in restaurant prices.
Mhm.
And what is apparent is that it's the rise in grocery prices that's larger. And that, in a way, to me, that's surprising because restaurants have to purchase food, have a staff to prepare it and present it, et cetera, et cetera. Do we know why that is? Or is it just one of those things that's going to have to be unraveled by the various economists?
I mean, I'm not a food economist, so
Fair
I
enough.
don't know exactly why that is, but I do know that a lot of like grocery staples have been impacted, by things that have been happening recently. Like even, there's been an avian flu outbreak that's affected the price of poultry and eggs. For a while there was Russia was putting a blockade on wheat exports from Ukraine, and that was affecting the price of cereal. So some of these are things that might be temporary, but then there are also sort of longer term issues that are definitely affecting costs.
You began to explain kind of the line graph of, okay, so very logically, numbers of people needing food assistance rose during the pandemic. I mean, that was a whole literal crisis. But then you say it came down, and that would be logical as people figured out how to do things, got back to work a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. But then the most recent article you wrote about said that I'm going to give the headline: traffic at New York City's pantries and soup kitchens remains high this year, 68% above pre pandemic levels. And so, what that would suggest is we didn't get back to where we were.
Right.
Um, Gee, Caroline, solve our problem. How are we going to help? I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm joking, of course. This is a major, serious thing because it's the foundation for for everything. Kids in school. I mean, on and on and on.
Right. I mean, I think one of the most alarming things actually is that there's been a real increase in the number of children whose families are relying on food pantries and soup kitchens. I think the figure was, a 75% increase in visits to, these resources from children since, compared to before the pandemic. And so that's something that, that's a real issue. And I think relying on pantries and soup kitchens is not really a solution.
Yeah,
Everyone I speak
that's
to.
which is funny. We're using that as the barometer, but like, goodness gracious, we don't really want to. We would like to have a kind of a normal, food system.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these are operations that are largely volunteer run. They're relying on a lot of donated food, some of it coming through City Harvest.
Yeah.
But then also, when they are, purchasing food or getting it through private donations, they're squeezed as well. The food pantries and the soup kitchens are also feeling the effect of inflation. So maybe they can't give people as much food, with the same donations as they could before. And so the people who are working on hunger definitely want to see longer term solutions from the federal government. There's going to be like an upcoming White House convention on hunger that I think a lot of representatives from New York City are going to go to and try to demand more permanent solutions.
Child tax credits is in that dialogue as well, and it makes me think that, and I'm not very close to all of the numbers, but support systems that were put in place to deal with the pandemic, many of those things are expiring now, and so people, to me, what that 68% says to me is that as a society we have not fully recovered.
Right. I mean, it's not just the increase in food prices that's affecting people's inability to buy food. It's the fact that the moratoriums on, eviction ended. The fact that
Oh yes,
child
that's right.
credits
That's right.
expired. When you have to pay rent, and you don't have a choice, then maybe you say like, okay, I can't buy food. Maybe I have to go to the food pantry. The cost of gas went up. So it's really all these different things that are affecting people's food security.
And so, where do we see solutions? Is this putting an association of groceries together? And in a way, I'm seeding the clouds for our next segment, which is going to be talking about the Riverdale Sunday Farmers Market, as well as a special presentation there, which will include Why Hunger out there. So that'll be our second segment. But is are the local farmers markets the answers? Is it putting, the Stop and Shops and ShopRite and all those, and even Target that sells groceries together? How do we deal with it? Or is it not a food solution? It's a poverty solution, and then we got to look at the minimum wage.
I mean, I think it's a lot of different things, and I am, maybe I'm not the best person to ask this question, but a
You
lot
are
of
the best
people.
person to ask.
I mean, the thing is, like, I think that there are probably a lot of innovative solutions. One thing that people have brought up over and over again is that, if people are eligible for SNAP, they should be enrolling, and there's not always enough outreach done to make sure that
Ah.
people who are eligible for SNAP know about it, or who are eligible for WIC, just for women with children, know about it. And so there's definitely a push to have, a larger enrollment effort to make sure people are enrolled, to make sure that the, federal government continues to give people more money through those programs, like certainly having the flexibility to spend money on whatever groceries you need, as opposed to, having to go get food from a pantry is preferred. But I'm sure there are also other solutions related to, easing inflation, and maybe creating cheaper options for people and that sort of thing.
We're just about to run out of time. What you have just suggested opens up another whole can of worms. And sitting where I sit and having these kinds of conversations all the time, the communication issue becomes a systemic problem because of the various fragmented elements of society, people with language differences, people with documentation problems. There is a home, certainly, what is it, 10% of New York City school kids, come out of a shelter system. That impacts the ability to just like blast social media with snap information,
Right.
because people are elsewhere. Plus, the language thing is a major thing. Anyway, listen, we got to run. Caroline Lewis, we'll keep reading you. Gothamist, WNYC. We hope you will continue to cover, as well as you have been doing, um, fundamental issues like this. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Great. We are going to take a break. We're going to talk about, in many ways, the very same subject. And that just happened kind of coincidentally that we put the two segments together. We're going to talk about hunger with a Grammy award winning folk singer, and talk about how he's coming to the borough of the Bronx to really help us eat more and feel a little better about ourselves. We'll take a break. Don't go away. All right, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I am very excited about this segment because not only is it about my favorite farmers market in the Bronx, but we are going to bring in an a Grammy award winning folk singer on the program. So let us say good evening to Shira Silverman. My friend Shira is the market manager for the Riverdale Y Sunday Market. Nice to see you again, Shira. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
And people will recognize Tom Chapin. He is a Grammy Award winner. He also, and maybe this for this segment to some degree, is even more important. He's a advisory board member for WhyHunger, and nice to have you with us, Tom. Before we just bring Shira in to talk about what's going to happen, it occurred to me why hunger, WHY, is was that named for World Hunger Year? Is that where it came up, or
It,
did I
it,
just make that up?
in 1975, Harry and Bill Ayers started Why Hunger, and
Why
and then-
Hunger?
and eventually changed the name. They started World Hunger Year. I'm sorry, WHY.
Right, that's
And
what I was thinking of. Yeah.
yeah, and they kept being this question of so what year is World Hunger Year? Of course, every year.
Yeah,
is.
well, yeah.
And so somewhere about 10 or 15 years ago, they changed it to Why Hunger,
Why
which is
Hunger?
a little
With-
clearer.
Which
name.
works. Okay,
Yeah.
let's bring Shira in. Shira, as you know, you're helping to feed the Axelbank family every Sunday because Suzanne and I come out there. And so let's talk about the Riverdale Y and the Riverdale Y Sunday Market and why we are bringing Tom Chapin to the program and then, of course, to the market on October 2nd.
So, the Riverdale Y Sunday Market is a farmers market in Riverdale. We are part of the Riverdale Y, and we are open every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the Riverdale Temple parking lot. The, the market was created in 2011 with the intention of bringing fresh food to the community. And
And so let me just help you along with it. So who are the vendors in there that Gary likes so much, and what is the attraction for people who go there as opposed to and nothing wrong with shopping in a supermarket or somewhere else, but I find that it's really much more pleasurable to hang around in the community and talk to farmers, et cetera, et cetera.
well, there are a few reasons. One is that I can say with great pride that my vendors are the best of everything you can find. Tom smiles, but I really mean it.
I'm
No, it's
I'm I'm with you. I've been to that farmers market. It's a
Oh, I
great
didn't
great
know.
farmers market. Yeah.
And listen,
So,
fresh fruit and vegetables, as well as you can get the nice barbecued chickens and the whole bit. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, so we have our core vendors who have been with us for a really long time. We are very fortunate to have three great farmers. Um, and it's Gonzalez Orchards of Conklin and Doremi Farms, and they have a whole variety of produce that you can find produce that really is the best quality that you can find anywhere. I mean,
It's true.
one of the things about local produce is that it's seasonal. So that, for example, right now I have three cobs of corn sitting on my kitchen counter where I cut one in half, and it's juicy. I mean, have you ever
It's for
bought
real.
a cob of corn at the grocery store that oozes
Like
juice
that.
at you?
All right. So listen, we want to bring Tom in. So on Sunday, October 2nd, we will be seeing Tom Chapin performing with the Chapin sisters. And the objective there was really to just talk about food insecurity or security and bring people in and have a good time, right? Shira, is that what we're doing?
Definitely. And one of the things that makes our market so special, that I think actually makes us unique in the Bronx and among farmers markets, is that we have a real community vibe. It's not just about the food and all the other products that you can get at the market.
Hmm.
It's all of that existing within this community vibe, which I think is what brings you to the market
It bring
every single week.
in part it brings me, but it also brings Tom Chapin. Tom, let's talk about why hunger and what your commitment, your family's commitment. I guess it's almost part of the last name Chapin at this point. Just
Yeah.
talk to me about why why you do it.
Well, first of all, this concert is sponsored by the Riverdale Y and by Why Hunger. and funded by the Jacobs Family Endowment. And so but the reason why I do this is my brother Harry in 1975, and along with the radio DJ named Bill Ayers, got together and had this crazy idea that they could stop hunger in America and around the world.
How silly.
Because there's so much food, there's food enough to feed everybody all the time. But it's the question of who's growing it, what are they growing, and how are they getting to places. Now, farmers markets are fabulous because you cut out the middleman, farmer to you, to us. And aside from the fact that it helps the farmer and helps the family, it also, as Shira said, it's the best food you can get, and fresh. And I'm a huge fan. We have a couple of farmers markets here, one of which has the Conklin folks as well. I'm in the Hudson Valley, and
let me just interject, just so we can move it along. So there is really not only the idea that Tom Chapin will be playing, and it's exciting, and I know Shira's brought one of my favorite local rhythm and blues bands out there. That's a nice thing, but for you, this is really a community thing to do this, have the music and the issue integrated, etc.
Also, and when you ask what's the difference between this and a supermarket, aside from the great food, it's a community. You don't stop in a supermarket and talk to your neighbors that you see every week. But
certainly
you do
not
in a
like you
farmer's
do
market.
here. Yeah, that's right.
You do in a farmer's market. You go there. Oh, and you see folks, and you see that, hey, you got a new dog. Oh, new kid. It's really like the old neighborhood thing where you're talking to folks. And that is enormously important in this day and age when people are so scattered and in their own little block and their own little TV and iPad and phone and this and that. All of a sudden, you go to the market and you're walking, and you get to talk to the guys and the females who grew the stuff. Where are they working? How'd you get into this? Blah blah blah. Oh, and what's good this week? Oh my goodness! And there's this whole sense of community that is so. Really lovely,
I just again want to move it on. Your music works right for this. I mean, again, you can't separate.
It's lovely to have a song,
That's why. Okay,
it's early morning, not quite 4. The farmer's up and out the door, in little farms all through the state. They're loading bushel, box, and crate. Though you sleep in. While you sleep in safe and sound, the farmer's driving to your town, bringing fresh grown, fresh picked food your way as the sun wakes up the day. At the farmer's market, close to home, all the food you'll find there is locally grown. Like a farm once a week in your neighborhood, it's Farmer's Market. Good. I'll skip to the last verse. And if it's still a bit too hard to try and till your whole backyard, there is a place right down the street where all your savvy neighbors meet, and like the seeds that the farmers sow, your whole community will grow. And
it's fine.
Farmers Market.
There you go.
Farmers Market, good. But that
you have a new CD, Tom? You wanted to just hold up?
Well, I have a brand new CD for grown-ups. This is my 28th CD, and it's called "Hold Your Ground." That's coming out actually the 21st of September. So, and I also have 13 albums for families, and one of the albums is called "This Pretty Planet," and it's song about and also "Give Peas a Chance" is the name of the album.
That's good.
It's an award-winning album about good food and the green earth and how they connect. And that's where that song is in.
I want to talk about WhyHunger.
Sure.
There are so many activities. We've got a little video we can show as well. Just talk about the range of activities that that you're doing with WhyHunger, and how. Listen, we're not solving the problem but we're every day another day, right?
The idea here, as I said earlier, is enough food to feed the world. And Harry always thought hunger in America, where this is just unconscionable. and he decided to spend the rest of his life working on this, and that was 10 years. And then before he was killed. But what's happened since his death 41 years ago is that WhyHunger has done this amazing work, and basically they're putting hungry people in touch with food, helping them towards self-reliance, and really it's a global nonprofit founded in 1975. And they have a fundamental belief that access to nutritious food is a human right, and hunger is a solvable problem.
And you know,
you can go on their website, whyhunger.org. Amazing stuff they've done. It's one of the proudest things I get to do. I was on the board, the actual board, for 38 years. Now I'm an advisor to the board.
Right.
But every time I sit down with the folks at WhyHunger, I go, wow, this is doing great work.
In addition to the food insecurity interview that we did in the first part of the program, it's always been incredible in the borough of the Bronx that has the largest fresh food market in the nation at the Hunts Point Food Market, and there's food insecurity down the block. Now, you can't have a bigger systemic quandary than that. And, you know, Tom talked about food being available. It's there. We just have to get it to people. In the Bronx, we understand that all too well. So, Shira, Sunday, October 2nd, right? We're all coming out?
For sure.
What are the times of the market?
The times of the market are 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. and the concert itself starts at 1 p.m.
Uh-huh.
And we're doing it a little later because we want everyone to be able to come, including the churches.
Uh-huh.
And I should mention, it's not just me, it's my daughters, Abigail and Lily, the Chapin sisters, who grew up working this thing, and they just came back from an amazing tour in England. And Abigail and Lily will be there. You can just check out thechapinsisters.com or .org. Mm-hmm. And my wonderful bass player, Michael Mark, who wrote Entertainment Tonight theme song. And Michael it'll be a wonderful concert where we'll sing back and forth. To me, when I get a chance to sing with my daughters, hey, it's the best.
I think that it's just a beautiful thing that we can never separate the Chapin name from the commitment to these kinds of things. And so, you know, I'm going to see you there in person. I will definitely be there. Gary. And thank you so much, Tom Chapin, for everything. And Shira for helping to feed the Axelbank family.
Shira, I will see you on October 2nd. Looking forward to it.
I very much look forward to it. And that song is perfect.
It's perfect. Well, you'll hear it live. Listen, we got to run. Thank you, Shira Silverman and Tom Chapin. And in our previous segment, Caroline Lewis from Gothamist WNYC. And we'll see you next week. Good night.
Great. Thanks, Gary.